Sir, I have already started the recording.
Oh, you have started a recording. Now, okay, okay. So we'll go start with where we stopped last time. So what we have now is basically what we call as modeling of this turbulence. Okay. So turbulence modeling. We talked about the basics of turbulence. We talked about how the um, various aspects of turbulence comes about, like the large eddies, small eddies, etc. Now we need to see how we can model a turbulent flow. That is, you in it. I think in your case, most probably you haven't done laminar flow modeling either. You must not have, most of you at least wouldn't have done laminar flow modeling either. So modeling is a new thing. If you are doing laminar flow modeling, you are likely to come across what we call as the finite difference method. I mean, I'm not doing that right now, but that is what you'll come across. Finite difference method. But when you do the turbulence modeling as associated with viscous flows, when you do the turbulence modeling associated with viscous flows, the main thing that comes about is finite volume method. Finite volume method. Um, so we will be maybe tomorrow or at least next week, we will start with finite volume method. We will be doing the discretization, how to see how the equations come about. But before we do that, you need to have some idea. I'm not going into any detail because it's actually, there are many books on this turbulence modeling, which will, if we do, it will take you to great depths in there. It has been done to a great extent. So probably not a, it's not at all relevant for you. It's only for those who want to do more research on the generation of turbulence models and the research. It is the research applications. So what you could do, what you should definitely have as an MTech student or as a BTech student, is that you should have some idea about what is finite volume method, as well as what is turbulence models, which are the different models available, and what do the terms in these models when stand for. For example, many of you will be going for a um, job in a CFD company probably. So when you do that, mainly you need to know what are the things that you are seeing in the model. So when you look at when you start up the Ansys Fluent, you see a lot of terms coming up. Do you want to use this? Do you want to use this? So you should know what it means. So by the time the course is over, you should have a good idea about all those things that you will see in that is the way in which I structure the course. So it's mostly so that you can get a very good idea of doing the modeling, all aspects of modeling, starting from the turbulence modeling to the finite volume method or the discretization method. So you should have a idea of what that is. So what we will do is mainly we'll go into what we call, so as I said, this is what you are going to do next I mean from tomorrow or next week. Right now, let us take a look at what we call as turbulence models, which are the various turbulence models available in use, available today. Various turbulence models available. This is something that has evolved over the course of the last 1.5 centuries. Like starting from about, I would say 1900, it started developing. So about 100 years plus 20 years, yeah, about 120 years that has been the development for turbulence models. This started with the first development by Prandtl, who put forward what is known as, this name is quite famous actually. You should, for those who are in fluid mechanics, you should remember this name. Like some great names you will see, like G.K. Batchelor. I'm just mentioning just so that you know about it. Batchelor is a great name. Just like that, Prandtl is a great name associated with fluid mechanics. So he proposed the first turbulence model. And it was known as, it is known as a mixing length model. Generally, it's one of the, I would say it is the toughest to derive as such as a turbulence model. So it is the mixing length model. The idea was very novel and very innovative. And later after that, we start going into different other types of turbulence models, like I'll come to that. So we come to after the proposing of this mixing length model, that was around 1908. It was for a long time this model was used successfully in many cases, and not so successfully in some other instances, till later what is known as a first one equation model came about. So this is number one in the number of models, and then something known as a one equation model came about. We'll see what it is. So let's not hurry about it now. One equation model is one type of model which solves. So basically, when you say something equation model, the equation basically represents a differential equation. Okay, it's not about algebraic equation. It's a differential equation. So the one equation model is a type of modeling methodology which uses one differential equation for K, the turbulent kinetic energy. It uses for turbulent kinetic energy, and then what you really need is some other kind of methodology to determine L, which is known as a mixing length, which is known as the integral length scale of the in turbulence. And this L, in this case, a one equation model was derived ad hoc, which means it is different for different flows. Like we have seen, we said, that that the Reynolds number at which the flow transitions from laminar to turbulence is different for different types of flows. So when I say that turbulence occurs at what Reynolds number, you cannot say. It depends on the type of flow. For example, a flat plate boundary layer, it might occur at a higher value as compared to a flow over a cylinder. Flow over a cylinder, it occurs at around 2000. Flat plate is slightly more, and for some other flows it's even more. Jets, etc., they have even more higher Reynolds number. Just like that, this value of L, which is basically known as the integral length scale, or it's just now called the length scale of turbulence. This length scale of turbulence, it varies for different types of flows. For example, L in some kind of flows, L in some kind of flows with a boundary like this. So L is usually written as kappa y in these cases, where kappa is the von Karman constant. It is 0.4. It's a von Karman. It's not wave number. This kappa is not the wave number. It is the von Karman constant. It is 0.4. So L equals kappa into y. Where y is the distance from the wall. So any eddy at a distance of y from the wall will have a characteristic length scale of L equals kappa y. This is one type of assumption this was also made by Prandtl. This thing was also made by Prandtl, and it's true for some very basic type of flows, like a very simple flows over a boundary. When we deal with such flows, or for example, over a flat plate sometimes, or over a wall, when you have a flow over a horizontal wall, in such cases, some very simple cases, this L equals kappa y works very well. So it was found to occur. It was found to be good in very good comparison with the experiments were observed. With this L equals kappa y was a good one. Then similarly, when you use something like a jet. As I told you, a jet is something when there is an orifice, and from this orifice, water or some other fluid comes out into a ambient fluid. This is an ambient fluid. Okay, so this comes into an ambient fluid, and the jet grows like this. The jet grows like this, and this is known as it entrains fluid from the ambient. Ambient fluid is this. So the jet entrains the fluid from the ambient fluid, and this is known as a jet. For it, its value is something alpha into delta, where delta is known as the jet width. This is delta. Delta is known as the jet width. So alpha is some constant. So for those things, L equals alpha delta. So what you see is that you get different kinds of such. You have some different types of such ad hoc conditions have to be used, and even this L, when you assume this, when you make an assumption, it works well for different types of jets. Means different dimensions of jets, jets with different length scale, different velocities, etc. So that's what I say. That's what I'm saying. So what they needed to do at that time was, you need to have an experiment. See, suppose you're trying to find some phenomenon somewhere. So what you do is you have a small experiment. You set this ad hoc. You develop an ad hoc relationship like this. This is for a jet. This is for a boundary layer flow. So you set up a condition like this, and then just extrapolate it for a flow that big flow that you want to study, like flow or let's like flow or a ship, if you want to study over the if it is if in case of jet flow or a large jet, let's say flow coming out of a chimney, that is a jet. So that is a fluid, something is coming out and it is entraining into the surroundings. So that is an example of jet. So when you have things like that, you extrapolate it, and that is how they used to do this fluid mechanics equations in 1910s, 1920s, etc. So that is the ad hoc method of doing ad hoc method of doing the CFD. That was also a kind of it's not computational so much, but still it was the beginnings of CFD. That is how they used to do it. So this started with one equation models, started with mixing length models, then it went into one equation models. What is happening is that in the one equation models, there is a particular differential equation for K which you solve, and then there is this L which is done ad hoc. Such models are called incomplete models, because you are using these kind of ad hoc conditions. So you cannot say that it's a really complete model. So these are called incomplete models. These names are used in the CFD for this only. Incomplete models means like this. Then what they went, so they went further, and by 1940s, not 40s, I think it was before the 1940s probably. Okay, so then in the 1940s, they started developing what are known as two equation models. So basically, they went about from this one equation model to what are known as two equation models. These don't use any ad hoc conditions. These models use different, they use two equations, like one equation for K, like the same as one equation model, and another equation for maybe epsilon, which is the dissipation rate, or for omega, or for L, or for K into L. These are different types of equations. So these are known as two equation models. Basically, two differential equations are solved, one for K and one for any of these parameters. So when you have this, then you have the two equation models. They are basically, these equations came to be called as K epsilon model. If K and epsilon are used, it is known as a K epsilon model. If K and omega are used, it is known as a K omega model. If K and L were, basically this was quite more famous, like K into KL, KKL model. So these were used. So this basically, this was developed by Launder mainly. This was developed by Kolmogorov, and KKL model was developed by a person called Meller and another person called Yamada. So Meller-Yamada scheme. Now this KKL model is basically applied in oceanography. Okay, the main approach is in oceanography and atmospheric science. And this K epsilon model is fully used in mechanical engineering. They use K epsilon model, and K omega model was mainly a kind of mathematical model. It was mainly applied by mathematicians, by like Kolmogorov was a mathematician. So all these K omega models, it was developed. It was basically in the mathematics field. So basically these type of two equation models were developed. So once the two equation models were developed, they were much better. They don't use any ad hoc conditions. Now, even now, what we use are basically two equation models. The computational power has come to such a stage that we can now use very clearly, very successfully use very successfully use these two equation models for any kind of flows, any kind of flow. In fact, flow over an aircraft, that is one of the most complicated probably. Flow over an aircraft or flow over a ship, the whole ship can be modeled and without any problem. These are basically the workhorses of the industry. Basically, these two equation models have been called as the workhorses of the industry. No, it's just mentioned. It is just mentioned like the workhorses of the industry. So the industry is very much interested in these two equation models, basically mainly the K epsilon model. This is the one that has enjoyed the highest degree of popularity, K epsilon model, and it's used. And this one basically is used mainly in oceanography and atmospheric sciences. There they use KKL model. Okay, so these were the two equation models. Then now, so once the two equation models became very useful, they became very popular. Then the people have started using what are known as LES, or before that I should say, no, algebraic stress models. Sorry, there is something else. Algebraic stress models. These models, I'll tell you, it uses an equation for Reynolds stress directly. It uses an equation for Reynolds stress, Rij. Reynolds stress is this. They use an equation for Reynolds stress directly, and the other parameters are used by algebraic. Okay, basically, what do you mean by algebraic? Algebraic means a simple equation. Okay, like, you know, there are two types of things we use here. One is a differential equation and the another is an algebraic equation. Differential equation, you know, we use differentials. It's a d by dx of certain things. So algebraic means you use a simple, like L equals kappa y is an algebraic equation. It's a simple equation. So those kind of equations are called algebraic equations. So there is an equation for Reynolds stress and different elements of the equation are simplified using algebraic models. They are known as algebraic stress models. That came used, that actually didn't enjoy much popularity due to it was not very successful. And then later in the research area, this is mainly in the last maybe by 1990 or 2000s. This started like the time when we were starting to do when we were doing our PhD. That time Reynolds stress models started being used in the research. Reynolds stress models were being used, and Reynolds stress models means we will see that. In fact, I have a set of slides you can read. When you see that, you will know what it is. But basically, they also use Rij, but they use basic equations. It is a differential equation for the Reynolds stress. This is algebraic equation for Reynolds stress. This is differential equation for Reynolds stress. differential equation for Reynolds stress. So this is basically known as the Reynolds stress models, and nowadays the research goes on in Reynolds stress models. For example, if you happen to see any of my papers or any of the papers recently in our institute also, or anywhere in India or abroad, in research, most of the work will be done on Reynolds stress models. So this is the one that we basically work on. It is more complicated than the two equation models, but not as bad as the next one that comes up. That is I'm coming to that. The next one is something very famously known as famously known as the large eddy simulation. Large eddy simulation, it is basically known as LES. It is the name of LES it is used as LES. It requires enormous computer resources. What is LES exactly? We will see. It requires enormous computing resources which are not available so much in India right now, and so in India you will see very less work being done on LES. Somebody is, yeah, okay. So this is known as large eddy simulation. It is one of the later on things that have been added. The LES is very accurate. Actually, the solution comes very accurate, and what they do is basically that part of it is modeled and part of it is resolved. And what does resolved mean? Resolved means so there are two things: modeled and resolved. Model, you know what it means. We use algebraic models. Resolved means we use the differential equation and we use a grid as small as the smallest eddy. We use a grid as small as the smallest eddy, and when we do that, we call it as resolved length scales. Now, this is, as I told you, it is in the US, the defense labs and all that, they use LES. They are able to have the kind of computer resources that will run LES, and believe me, it's much more accurate than the either the Reynolds stress models or the two equation models. So obviously, and companies like Boeing, the companies which develop the aeroplanes like the Boeing, mainly the Boeing or the Lockheed Martin, these kind of companies who manufacture mainly aeroplanes or rockets or missiles and all that, all those companies, they do LES. They are the only ones who have these kind of computing powers, which is extremely expensive and extremely, but the solution is as good as that, as accurate as that. That is LES. Then, and finally, something which is almost to an impossible level, what we have, there is something known as a DNS. It is actually a direct numerical simulation. Direct numerical simulation. It is a form that actually I told you once. What it does is the whole domain is divided into grids as small as the Kolmogorov size eddies. As small as a Kolmogorov size. Remember, that means the whole thing is Kolmogorov size means what? It is, if you remember, we did some problems in the last class, where we talked about what are the size length scales and all that. We saw that like the viscous sublayer is about the head of a pin, the type of the head of a pin, and so Kolmogorov size is almost around that. It is usually around about the head of a pin. The size of a head of a pin is the size of the grids. So if you take a grid as small as this and you need to run something like an aeroplane, it's just impossible. You can imagine how many grid points you need. It's not in billions itself. It's in some other number range, which we cannot do anything. So these kind of direct numerical simulations, that is this Kolmogorov size idea, that small pin size, that kind of grid size, we can run what right now, according to the computer available right now in this generation, we can run we cannot even really run a flow over a cylinder. Flow over a cylinder means you have a cylinder, flow goes like this. It's usually like this. The flow goes like this and it goes there. It goes like this and like this and like this. So this is what is meant by flow around a cylinder. Roughly, we can kind of think of running very small cylinders and very low flow velocities we can run. So that is the state of DNS, direct numerical simulation, that we do. We know even, but the thing is, since we are talking about Kolmogorov sizes, these solutions are exactly accurate, means it is as it is in the turbulent cases. So you get the exact turbulent value in, for example, when you run a numerical, you will see, as I have some slides, you will see when you running the RANS means two equation models are basically called as RANS. RANS is, if you remember, Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equations. These when usually RANS can be one equation model, two equation model, etc. Reynolds stress model there, but generally RANS means we used the word RANS for the two equation models. The K epsilon model is a RANS model. K epsilon model or the K omega model is a RANS model. So if you compare with the RANS model, you will see that RANS model is what you get is a mean flow. You get a very average, like a smoothened out flow. You get for any simulation that you are running, you get a very smoothened out result. The whole area will be smoothed out. So you are not getting that kind of turbulence. But if you run DNS for the same thing, you will see that the whole thing is extremely turbulent, like extremely fluctuating. All the fluctuating can be properly be captured. And it's not even enough that you take small length scale. The time scale should also be Kolmogorov length scale, time scale. Kolmogorov time scale is very small. And so you run with a Kolmogorov length scale and a Kolmogorov time scale, your solution will take, right now it cannot run. You run in right nowadays, you run it for maybe half an hour for with a small case like this. That is how much the DNS has progressed. So we in this course also, and what you are going to do also if you are going into industry, will be basically these things, RANS equations, which basically means K epsilon model or any of the other two equation models. If you are lucky, you might get a better system with a Reynolds stress model, which is not exactly seen. It's mostly two equation models only for the industry. Okay, so that is an introduction to the turbulence modeling. This is turbulence modeling. So as you can see from now on, this really CFD is going to be a kind of field which anybody you are doing will require. I mean, even if you are studying, let's say something like thermal flow or something, or even studying the flow of water or a fluid structure interaction. I mean, problems are studying, everything can be done using CFD. Wave forces can be done using CFD. So CFD is something that would help everybody to learn right now. It's a really a very useful topic. So let us go into these modelings a little more in detail. I'll do one thing. What I'll do is I'll do a derivation of the mixing length model. Okay, which was done. This is basically something you need to know. This is what was done at 1908 or something like that. At that time, the mixing length model was developed, and let us derive this mixing length model. It is a very basic model. Let us derive this model, and then we will go into we will just go through. I'll show you which are the equations for K epsilon model and all that using a set of slides. We'll do that. So first, let us go into mixing length model. So this was, remember, in the year 1900. So at that time, there really was not much knowledge about randomness. So what you have in turbulence is what we call as randomness, right? So V randomness. So the flows we are dealing with are the flows are random flows. So the velocity fluctuates randomly. The tracers, if there is a tracer, it moves randomly. Everything is random. So random flows are the topic. Random flows are the topic. So this was not very much known at that time, except for one thing. They knew one thing which was very random, and that was the molecular theory of gases. This was developed even before 1900. It was somewhere around 1850 or something. The molecular theory of gases, also known as the kinetic theory of gases. It was also known as the kinetic theory of gases. So what Prandtl did, Prandtl understood that this thing was slightly like a randomness only. So what he said, let us follow the same method as in the kinetic theory of, kinetic theory of gases. Sorry. Kinetic theory of gases. So the kinetic theory of gases, and Prandtl actually saw that let us use the kinetic theory of gases for turbulence. Same thing he applied. So what I am going to do first is to show you the kinetic theory of gases. I'm going to derive the kinetic theory of gases. What is the turbulence stress? Let us see what is the turbulence stress for the kinetic theory of gases for this. And then using that, um, we will derive an analogy like Randall did. Just the same analogy is applied to the turbulent fluid flows, and you will see what so first let us go into the kinetic theory of gases. This works like this, that the kinetic theory of gases is something like this. So in the kinetic theory of gases, first what was done, what we assume is that we have a plane in which, let us say this is the y equal to 0 plane. We have a uniform flow like this. U of y. So u is the velocity, this is 0. So u of y, that means the u is varying with y. U is varying with y, and this is the y equal to 0. So this is the baseline. So this is u of y varies like this, and there are a couple of terms probably that will be used. One of them is what known as the momentum flux. Now, momentum flux, but to go into this, what you really need to know is what is really stress. We say skin friction stress. For those who have done something on the like those who have done resistance and propulsion, or some for the MTechs who have done the basic course on fluid mechanics, you talk about skin friction stress. So the skin friction stress or the skin friction is basically this is something that is overlooked sometimes. It is basically what we say is that if there is a boundary, or if there is a boundary, if there is a flow like this, this is known as X momentum. Means M into U. M is the mass of the fluid, and U is fluid. Usually we do not, as I told you, we do not write in case of fluids, we do not write M, we usually write rho, per unit volume. So rho into U. So this is known as the momentum in the X direction per unit volume, momentum per unit volume in the X direction. Okay. And when there is a boundary like this, some of this flux gets transferred in this direction. Okay, that is that what we say is that it is the flux of X momentum in the Y direction. This is the Y direction. in the y direction, the flux of x momentum, and this will be given by the momentum flux. So the momentum, so it will be given by the momentum into, so if m into the momentum is, let's say it is u, what will be the momentum? So what I'm now going into the molecular theory of gases. Okay, now I'm starting the molecular theory of gases, the kinetic theory of gases, which states it's something like this. There is a there are gas molecules here. Okay, these gas molecules move around with some velocity, like u double prime we are calling this. The book's notation is double prime to distinguish it from the u prime, which stands for turbulent fluids. For turbulent flows, the fluctuating velocity is given as u double prime. Let us call the random velocity of the molecules as u double prime. So a molecule in the x direction will have a total velocity of u plus u double prime. Okay, u is the velocity of the fluid itself. So that is something you have to understand. That's first time what I'm saying. There is molecular motion inside, but altogether on the top of it, at a larger scale, there is a fluid motion. Fluid is not a molecule. The fluid motion is superimposed on the molecule, and therefore the total molecular velocity in the molecule's velocity is u double prime, which is its internal velocity, plus u, which is the velocity of the fluid. So m, or rather rho, into this will give you the momentum in the, this will give you the momentum in the momentum per unit volume in the x direction. And to get, how will you get the momentum flux in the, to get a momentum flux, you have to do momentum into the volume flux. The momentum per unit volume into volume flux, which is volume per unit second, volume per unit time. That is what will give you the momentum flux. I know this is something you would have never done, and if even if you have done it in this so long back in the kinetic theory. This is how it comes about. So this, it will be, so the momentum flux in the y direction, the momentum flux in the y direction will be, so it will be v double prime into ds. This is the v double prime. V is meter per second into s is meter squared, so meter cube per second. This is volume flux. So this is the volume flux in this direction. So x momentum into volume flux in this direction will give you the momentum flux, x momentum flux in the y direction, x momentum flux in the y direction. And this flux in the y direction is what you call as stress, really, or force. Force is this, stress is this divided by unit area. But basically, so this is rho into u plus u double prime into v double prime ds is the force df in the force per force in the y direction, and that is known as, and that divided by this area. This ds is the area. So once I remove the area, this rho into u plus u double prime into v double prime, this is actually the momentum per unit time. This is the momentum flux in the y direction, which is also the stress. So this is tau. This is actually tau, which is rho into. Now we usually don't talk about tau at instantaneous times. We talk about tau at a time period. So in a fixed period of time. So in the kinetic theory, we say this is the net stress in the y direction, in the net stress in that wall. The net stress in that wall is given by this, which is equal to rho u double prime v double prime. And there is a minus there. You define the stress as minus, that's all. This is to make it similar to the in the turbulent fluids. So basically stress is now equal to minus rho u double prime v double prime. You can see that this is looking very much like the turbulent stress. It is looking very much like minus rho u prime v prime. The fact is that any stress that is produced as a result of momentum flux can be written like this, in some fashion similar to this. That is not required. I'm just going unnecessarily there, but you should know that basically the momentum flux in the y direction, x momentum flux in the y direction is equal to this. The stress, that is stress. It is a momentum flux per unit area. That means it's the stress. This is the stress in the y direction. This is the stress in that wall. Okay, so once you have this, I'll stop this here and go into something else, the kinetic theory again. It's not very difficult, but it's a little involved. Must have been very difficult at that time to, of course, invent something like this. But so let us assume a couple of assumptions are there. Like they assume that the flow is Maxwellian, means it's just a term which comes in kinetic theory. Maxwellian means it assumes that it says that a molecule when released has equal probability to go in any direction all around, like this, any direction. It has equal probability of going in all the directions. That is known as Maxwellian. So that will imply is that if there are n molecules per unit volume, out of these n by 2 molecules will go downwards and n by 2 molecules will go upwards. That is, to get that, we assume that the molecular structure is Maxwellian. You have to remember one thing. If we have a flow, really, then it's not really a Maxwellian structure, but it can be under certain conditions, which we'll come to later. So this basically is assumed to be Maxwellian, and therefore n by 2 molecules go upwards, n by 2 molecules come downwards. Similarly, this also you wouldn't be remembering anyway. Usually the velocities, we said something like u double prime, v double prime, etc. These velocities basically for the molecular velocities are very close, or it can be approximated by what is known as v thermal. It is known as the thermal velocity of molecules. In the kinetic theory, it comes up the exact value is about 4 by 3 the speed of sound. Molecular velocity is 4 by 3 times the speed of sound. So that is not required, but still it's known as a thermal velocity. So this thermal velocity, this is basically it's like our turbulent velocity, the velocity of the molecule, the general average velocity of the molecule, not average, the velocity of a molecule is about V thermal, and therefore this is equally probable in all directions, and its component in the vertical direction, those going in exactly above in the vertical direction will be V thermal into cos phi, where this is V thermal into cos phi. If this angle is phi, this direction it's V thermal into cos phi, and this you just take it from me. The average velocity of the molecules going in the positive direction, in the upwards, is an average of this, which will come as V thermal by 2. This derivation you just take it from me. So basically, the number of molecules traveling per unit volume, okay, in the positive direction is about n V thermal by 2. This is the momentum by 2 into 2. 1 2 coming from this and 1 2 coming from this. So n by 2 into n V thermal by 2, which is n V thermal by 4. This is the average. So we have n is the number of, let's see, molecules per unit volume. That is n into V thermal is meter per second. So what does this mean? So this is the molecules crossing per unit area per second. So what this means is that I showed you a graph like this, where there is velocity and this is y equal to 0. So this surface like this, we have like this, right? The surface, that plane, the number of molecules crossing per unit area in this direction or in this direction per unit second is actually equal to n V thermal by 4. That is what this whole derivation has come to. That is what I was trying to show. And if this is the total number of molecules crossing per unit time, this into m, which is the mass of a molecule, will give you what? What will it give you? It will give you the total mass crossing this surface per unit time. Total mass of the molecules, total. It basically becomes m into v thermal, which is number. It is the momentum flux again. It's basically the momentum flux crossing this surface. Now, one interesting thing you can see is what is n into m. This is, remember, this is something that was done in, this is kinetic theory of gases. This was done in 1850, which at which time there were very few things, like there wasn't even many things like viscosity and all that. It was just beginning to be developed, the concepts of viscosity, etc. So before that, you will see that n into m, what is n? N is the number of molecules per unit volume, n, and m is the mass of a molecule. So this represents the mass per unit volume, total mass of molecules per unit volume. It is actually the density of the gas. Okay, m is the mass of each molecule. This is the number of molecules. So mass into mass of one molecule into number of molecules will give you the total mass of the molecules per unit volume. So total mass of the molecules per unit volume is what we call as density. So that is the density rho. So let it be called as rho. So this becomes rho into V thermal by 4. Okay. Then I told you actually, I'll just do this derivation. Just I probably won't ask this derivation or anything for the exam, but this is something that is interesting. Mixing length theory, you know properly. I think it's good to know properly, and then you start learning K epsilon model, and you should know that very well, because if you are trying to do some modeling in this CFD, which in the ANSYS Fluent and all, you have to use K epsilon model. To know the K epsilon model, they'll say if you are in the industry, they'll say use a 2 equation model. When they say 2 equation model, you are supposed to use a K epsilon model most likely. And so you use the K epsilon model, you should know what are the terms in it. And a little back, you should know what is mixing length model. And so I'm just giving the background. If we start doing the backgrounds of the K epsilon model, mixing length model, it will take 2-3 courses to finish the whole thing. So there is no point in that. So I'm just doing the derivation of the mixing length model, which basically comes from the kinetic theory of gases. And that once we do that, we'll then go into the modeling properly. This is the first simplest type of modeling that was done. First step modeling that was done. So let me do one thing. Let's break for 5 minutes. Okay, I'll take a break for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back at after 5 minutes. Feeling a little thirsty and all. I'll just come now.